You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Well, good evening and welcome. Happy New Year's Eve. This, the last day of Project 2025. You made it. A moment of silence, of course, for the millions and billions and trillions who were slaughtered by Project 2025 after Donald Trump sunk the entire eastern half of the United States in fascism. The western half was bathed in coal dust and radioactive waste. At least that's what Rosie O'Donnell was telling me right after the last election. I wasn't listening very closely. She wasn't speaking very coherently. But we'll get to Project 2025 later, and when you can emerge from your bomb shelters. At the moment, we have far more salacious, exciting, titillating, superfluous news of the highest order to get to. Jack Smith, the guy that Merrick Garland, Biden's attorney general, admitted was not legally appointed to any kind of congressionally recognized office. Jack Smith, the special, super duper, alley-ooper prosecutor who went after Donald Trump. He sat before Congress, and finally, the transcripts have been released. And when I started looking at the various clips from the transcript that were being released to the public, I noticed a little something. The accounts over on the left side of the aisle were all claiming massive, incredible, super duper victory. They claimed that Jack Smith didn't act politically. The congressmen and women had asked him, Jack, did you prosecute Trump politically? And he said no. Well, I mean, that proves it. I'm incredible. In fact, you're going to hear a couple of people prove incredible stories this evening just by saying yes or no. But I noticed there was a little something that was a bit off in their little victory celebrations. Republicans are trying to release this during New Year's Eve so that no one notices it, as though the videos expire on social media. You guys do realize this isn't Y2K. The phones aren't going to shut off at midnight. All right, the ball doesn't drop onto the Cloudflare servers. That's not how that one functions there, Janet. And unfortunately for y'all, the videos from the Jack Smith transcript show something that is, well, if I was on the left, I wouldn't be particularly thrilled with this being released. First of all, Smith just openly admitting he violated federal law. You will recall that in Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump, he wiretapped and tracked the locations of 8 U.S. senators, very illegal, and then forced cell phone companies like AT&T to sign non-disclosure agreements. Now, you need a judge's order to force a phone company to allow hidden super duper secret wiretaps. Even with the Patriot Act, there are still some rules. And Judge James Boasberg, not an entirely unknown name over the last year, he rubber stamped and said, sure, Jack Smith, here you go. Well, here's Jack Smith admitting, yeah, he didn't actually say, oh, by the way, I want to wiretap some senators. That makes this extra illegal. Here's the clip.
When you sought these non-disclosure orders, the judge didn't know it was a member of Congress. Is that correct?
I don't think we identified that because I don't think that was department policy at the time.
Sorry, looks like that second camera just decided that it didn't want to be on at the moment. But yeah, I'm afraid that you telling the judge, I'm not going to tell you who these people were wiretapping are, but they're really bad people. January 6th, he chanted over and over and over, amen. Yeah, well, it turns out that's not enough. And yeah, that likely violates a couple of federal laws. More importantly, he also suggested that the president of the United States has no right whatsoever to say that the 2020 election was stolen at all. Not in his First Amendment right to say an election wasn't fair.
As I sit here right now, I can't remember specific conversations. I do remember that we knew that a sort of First Amendment defense would be part of the case. And I think when I mentioned to you earlier about how to frame the case, we want to make clear that this was not about trying to interfere with anyone's First Amendment rights, that this was a fraud. And as you know, under Supreme Court precedent, fraud is not protected by the First Amendment. And so in my mind, it was important to make that clear in the indictment. And that's why when we litigated this issue before the district court, we prevailed.
But the president...
Yeah, no. No. See, camera's back up now. No. You can't do that one. You can't just say, well, I mean, fraud's not illegal. Okay, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. If you say, I don't think that that particular contest was fair, that's not fraud. That's not. There is no mystical, beautiful thing out there that suggests that because you hold a certain position, you're not allowed to say that you don't trust some kind of a system. That's not a thing. That has never been a thing in any court, in any level in the United States. That's not allowed. Now, if you're going to make specific and detailed assertions like, I think that Dominion did X, Y, and Z in this way at this time, well, yeah, then you get into defamatory style cases. But if you are just going to say, I've been looking at the election and I just don't think it was very fair. In fact, I think it was stolen. A lot of ballots in Georgia. I mean, look at them. I don't know who signed off on these ballots. The signature looks like Tim Walz signed it with a tampon. When Trump says that, Jack Smith doesn't get to go there and go, well, actually, Mr. President, you can't just get in there and say, okay, that's not a thing. So that's obviously a big issue. And then we get to the House deposition. Jack Smith was asked, and I quote, did you develop evidence that President Trump was responsible? You know what? That's not fair just to hear me read it. Here, we've got this on the B-roll for you guys on the live stream. Here you go. Did you develop evidence that President Trump was responsible for the violence at the Capitol on January 6th? Now, that's an important question. This is the thing that made Nancy Pelosi shriek in menopausal rage. You know the kind of rage I'm talking about. The same kind that all angry old ladies in Congress yell with when they're not kneeling for George Floyd. And here's what they determined. Smith's answer. So in our view of the evidence was that he caused it and that he exploited it and that it was foreseeable to him. So they're saying, did you develop evidence that Trump caused the violence on January 6th? Trump responsible for it. You have the evidence that says it. We said, well, I mean, we think Trump saw it in the future. Like he opened up his tarot cards and there was a picture of a noose in front of the Capitol and he was like, I know what that means. It means there's gonna be trouble. No, that's not a legal evidence. This is foresight. I'm sorry, the Candace Owens school of it came to me in a dream is not legally admissible evidence. So the congressperson presses him on this, says, but you don't have any evidence that he instructed people to crash the Capitol, do you? Remember, this is what the BBC got in trouble for. This is what a lot of people in the media have gotten in trouble for. Saying, oh, Trump got out there and said, we're going to go to the Capitol and burn it all down. Quick, that guy in a buffalo suit, get that man in a buffalo suit, grab him, give him the podium, and we're going to take our country back. He didn't do that. He didn't do that at all. And Smith knows that. That's why he answered, quote, as I said, our evidence is that he, in the weeks leading up to January 6th, created a level of distrust. Ah, that's the same. He then used that level of distrust. See, he's going to do like the girl who thinks you're cheating on her. She can't prove it because you don't like talk to anybody, but she knows in the back of her mind, when you said hello to that waitress, you were in a horrid affair. So she starts building nonsensical arguments one after the other. So Jack Smith says he used this distrust, this mistrust he created to get people to believe fraud claims that weren't true. And he made false statements to state legislators, to his supporters in all sorts of contexts, and was aware in the days leading up to the January 6th incident that his supporters were angry. He knew people didn't like the idea that there might have been some hanky-panky stuff going on in the election. I mean, if you get out there and express that you don't like something, clearly what you're asking for is for a riot to take place. I mean, unless you're a fan of like the Philadelphia Eagles, that's just not the case. And to be fair with you, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to riot whether they win or lose. So not really admissible here either. So Jack continues, now once they were at the Capitol, there's Sherlock Holmes getting into the frame of it here. And once the attack on the Capitol happened, he refused to stop it. Oh, yeah, Donald Trump refused. What in that moment when they're mad, what did you actually want President Trump to go out there and do? What Secret Service agent is going to say, hey, Mr. President, would you go ahead and bring you over to the Capitol? You'll walk out and you'll go, everyone stop, form an orderly line. I'll sign a couple of copies of Art of the Deal and I'll go home. As I recall from the actual records we have, the President of the United States requested that Nancy Pelosi send in the National Guard. And she said, no. And she's on recording saying that she feels responsible for saying no, for sending in the National Guard. So this entire testimony by Jack Smith proved that he essentially created an entire prosecution on hearsay, on a junior high rumor. Yes, I hate to break it to you, but the song I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus has more evidence laid out in the lyrics of that classic Christmas tune for the existence of Santa and your mother kissing him than anything Jack Smith used to prosecute the President of the United States. Oh, it gets worse. Isn't that exciting? It gets much worse. So Jack Smith also pointed out that the key witness that he relied on for the January 6th testimonies relied on hearsay, lacked any firsthand evidence. That's right. His key witnesses were playing telephone. I heard it from Jan that she heard it from Dr. Phillips that Melissa was on the Capitol Hill on January 6th. And I tell you what, she said, there was some funky stuff going on. That was their star witness. You couldn't even get this on an episode of Matlock. That's how ridiculous this is. Oh, you wanted it to get, even a little bit more ridiculous? I have some of the excellent breakdown from Julie Kelly over on X. Some really, really good stuff here. I want to walk you through some of the misrepresentations, falsehoods, straight up lies. So Smith had no evidence that any of these so-called classified documents that he claimed to have found were in boxes temporarily stored at Mar-a-Lago's ballroom or bathroom after the president left the White House. Jack Smith had no evidence of any kind in his possession that he was carrying around like H&S Citrus grapefruit boxes worth of documents. Like the kind that Biden was keeping next to the Corvette. Jack Smith had no idea. But he still ordered the raid. And then Merrick Garland and Joe Biden insisted, I will repeat, insisted on the FBI treating this as essentially a weapons drawn style raid. Even after agents in the FBI said, we don't need to do this. We can just go knock on Mar-a-Lago's door and ask Trump if he has the documents. We don't need to swing in through the windows like the end of Christmas Vacation. A lot of Christmas media references in the show tonight. It gets worse. Because, of course it does. Smith was extremely aware of the 2024 election calendar, which is, according to Julie Kelly, why he took what he himself described as the extraordinary step in asking the Supreme Court to bypass the D.C. appellate court, the next normal step, in considering Judge Chutkan's December 2023 order denying all forms of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution to take up the immunity question immediately. So, as you will recall, Smith made a huge point of saying that he had no idea at all whether there was any immunity questions or political prosecution here. And now we find out that it was actually Smith who specifically pushed it through, bypassing the appellate court and getting that up to SCOTUS, who then did, thankfully, turn it down. There are more lies. We're just going to go through them real quick because I don't want to spend all evening on this. It's just that nonsensical. The idea that the unarmed protest at the Capitol on January 6th was an attack incited by the president. And then, of course, the unsubstantiated allegation that 140 officers were injured by protesters. Smith's January 6th indictment, as you will recall, was 4 counts. 2 of them were related to 1512, Section 2. It's a corporate fraud statute, which was used in a lot of the January 6th cases. And according to SCOTUS in the Fisher decision, 2 other really vague conspiracy counts, like conspiracy to defraud and conspiracy against rights, as though the president of the United States getting out there and saying, George is looking pretty suspicious. And also Fox News, they called Maricopa County for Joe Biden yesterday. And the election is not even for another week and a half. So what's going on here? I mean, him saying that is like, a conspiracy to defraud people of rights? This is silly. It is silly nonsense. And to make this clear, you should go check out Julie_Kelly2 over on X. She goes through document after document after document after document after document in which she makes it clear that Jack Smith is in fact, the very circus clown he's been made out to be. Now, let's dig into a couple of additional things when we come back from the break. We are way over on the clock where I'm supposed to be. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, back with a crying Somalian mother who was forced to say fraud is bad here on the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. You're on the Daily Signal. It's New Year's Eve. Oh, what's that? You were expecting me to do some year in review where we talk about all of the wonderful things that happened and my best moments. No, I'm not doing that. We might do that after New Year's. Right now, there's fun news to dig into. For example, there are individuals out there who have promised you for years that the Somali migrant community, that they are just as freedom-loving as you and I. They've assimilated just like the vast majority of Hispanic legal immigrants, of Asian legal immigrants, of European legal immigrants. That those individuals who came to this country and toiled to learn English and assimilate and become a huge part of this country and its economy and its culture, and members of their local churches, that's just like these Somali migrants escaping from war-torn Somalia over the last 10 years. And well, really all the way back to the guy that started importing people on the migrant basis. And the reason why, although many of you do hold a lot of respect for him, I'm sorry, I will always have aught against George H.W. Bush, because it is he that said, let's import everyone into the United States. I don't care for that. No. That kind of compassionate conservatism very much screwed the pooch, because it turned from a drip, drip, drip of migrants into a deluge, a fire hose, fire hydrant on full blast of unfettered, unvetted migrants into the country who were plopped down in places like in Minnesota and Washington and Ohio, and then proceeded to do things that are more closely related to the honor culture of the Middle East and East Africa. And here we have one of my favorites. You were told, as you recall, all of these people said they're just, you can give them lots of money. There's nothing wrong. It's not like they believe that fraud is morally acceptable. Here is a Minnesota mom on camera who is complaining that the federal government, I'm sorry, I said Minnesota mom. Here is a Somali migrant in Minnesota who is claiming that taking away the federal funds for childcare in Minnesota, by which I mean the grants from the Department of Health and Human Services that have now been frozen and are supposedly in the process of being clawed back because of all of the fraud, that's really, really evil. Now, in the script that she's reading on her phone, she accidentally says the line in the script, fraud is wrong. I want you to watch her reaction. Those of you who are listening on the radio or on the live stream podcast later, go watch this on the live stream. It is wild. Here you go.
If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
So I will try to paint you a bit of a word picture, because if I don't, my jaw will just drop and sink into the studio carpet. She says, now, fraud is wrong. And then she realizes she's made a blunderous error, because what has she just done? She has just condemned the members of her community. And immediately, in her hijab, she starts looking around in terror. Now, from another angle in the room, it looks like she's looking at like grown men in the room who, I'm just going to be very honest with you because we're all thinking it, very good possibility that she left this particular conference and then got hit for accidentally condemning a big portion of her community. She is terrified because she has admitted fraud is wrong.
Go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
She's like, oh no, what did I say? Hand over the mouth. Now she looks up at one man, looks over at two other men, looks back, looks to a person right off camera, and then has to be comforted to continue because she said, what? Fraud is bad. Well, what's the problem with this? Oh, they have not assimilated into American culture. None of this. I have not mentioned the color of her skin. I have not mentioned her religion. I have mentioned one thing and one thing only, the common cultural core of where she comes from. Just as you would talk about someone from a certain portion of Appalachia, or a certain portion of New England, or a certain portion of Texas, or someone who was born in a Buc-ee's. Sorry, don't mean to be redundant. Cultural standards, guys. Ask someone to do a California accent and watch their mouth drop and them start imitating a beefhead surfer guy. People understand cultural origination. She's terrified because she's admitted that fraud is bad. Look, she's gonna have a heart attack. Look at her, she's terrified. She literally backs away in terror. I'm sorry, Minnesota Department of Child Services, could you please have a non-Somali speaking representative go and check on that young woman, please? Oh, Tim Walz told me that it's the white men, it's the problem, whatever that means. I mean, if you're by white men, you're talking about the dork running in Minnesota, then yes, absolutely. Daniel's telling me a super chat, cat on a lake, happy new year, Tony and team. And yes, fraud is bad. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Now, rest assured, there are some new developments. I remember telling you on the show yesterday, what was it? Can you think back a little bit if you were joining us now? Hang on a second. On the show yesterday, I said, collecting information, very good, but be careful. Don't go into any situations where you're trying to force your way into places or anything like that, because as soon as the media have a whiff of anyone doing something wrong regarding investigating these daycares, that will be the national story. Well, wouldn't you know it? What's one of the lead stories today? Documents stolen and trashed in the Nokomis Daycare Center in Minneapolis. Now, this does smack of Jussie Smollett and This Is MAGA Country. And you'll see why in just a second here. Let's see what gets stolen and smashed up in this Somali daycare center.
Unfortunately, we saw that there was important documentation, enrollment of the children, and also employee documentation that was gone.
Enrollment information on the children was gone. Yes, when I break into any place, the first thing I go is, oh, quick, where are their previous employment and personal records that you could FOIA? If they're receiving federal money, you can seek access to those pieces of information through the Department of Child Services, whether or not Minnesota wants to give it to you or not. Now, they might have to obscure the names on the piece of paper because of identifying information and FERPA. But in this case, that makes no sense at all. Here's the news report. Look at the damage on this.
Of what they say vandals did. Now, this is where they say the vandals got into the daycare through cinder block and appeared to be unsuccessful when trying many other ways. The daycare says it appears the vandals first tried to saw into the door of the Family Dollar next door in the shopping center. But that sounds like something the common American thief does, doesn't it, guys? Right? Isn't that something you do? I will remind you that the American form of burglary does not do this. That's not, I mean, that's a level of skill, I suppose, if you want to call it that. This is something that you would see in an Avengers movie when they are sipping coffee in East Africa. They tried to break into the Dollar General next door and then break in through like the drywall and the cinder blocks to rip holes in the wall to look for money in the walls. Look, I have in the Midwest had the fortune of knowing a couple of individuals who were later arrested for tweak theft, going after copper to fund their particular drug habits. They didn't do this. They'll break into easily accessible areas, sure. They might force or kick open doors that are like thin locks. They're not going in sideways like the Juggernaut in the last good X-Men movie.
That didn't work. The manager claims those who broke in went straight to the office, stealing information of the many children who were taken care of here.
The many children. Many children that are totally here. They stole all that information. It's gone. And it's not on the computer or anything. Wouldn't want that, would we? No, they're actually written in ancient papyrus. Actually, whoever it was triggered a large boulder to chase them out of the building. But due to some amazing whip skills, they were able to somehow swing over a large chasm. Harrison Ford was unavailable for comment. Beautiful, yes. Right before I'm about to be investigated, I definitely have major break-ins where the dog eats my homework. Excellent. That brings us to the media. The media is a very special case in this particular story because they are very embarrassed. CNN, CBS, MS Now, all of the various affiliate organizations, they slept on this story for a long time. Because while the Fox affiliate up in Minnesota was reporting on these particular fraud stories for over a decade, national news left it alone because, well, it's one of those equity classes of people. You're not supposed to talk about fraud there. No. You're supposed to do a national news story when someone gets arrested for meth in Iowa, otherwise known as half of the arrests in Iowa. That's national news everywhere. Jake Tapper comes in, well, the president didn't have anything to say about the meth arrest in Iowa, but 10 years of fraud, $18 billion, every single industry connected with Somali migrants, infected with rampant fraud and theft and all of the other various kinds of funly worded crimes that go with it. And not a peep. So now that the entire country's talking about it, and as I told you, they wouldn't be able to ignore this forever, now the claws come out. And they are the most petty, bitter, whining, sniveling, dying breed of journalist claws ever. I do not have a journalism degree. I have a science education and a minor in OB-focused pre-med biology. And then I have a couple of master's degrees in education that were completely useless and a waste of money. I don't have a journalism degree. I'm going to tell you a secret. I've looked at a lot of these journalism programs, and I thank God every single day that I never wasted a moment. They don't teach you anything at all. Maybe a couple of legal standards that then all of those corporate journalists then go and ignore completely. So all of these corporate journos are super embarrassed that random guys and gals from around the country are looking up data on public websites and then are driving around and going, excuse me, this looks like a house or a vape shop or a cardboard box. It doesn't look like a daycare to me. Can I register my kid here? And then the person starts screaming in a different language and then running around and smacking into the glass like a bird trying to fly through on a summer day. And the corporate media is embarrassed because what are they normally doing? Well, they're showing up, and setting up the fake police lights, the red and blue LEDs, and standing by the interstate where a crash occurred here 7.5 hours ago. So CBS released a huge initial report, also trying to be Nick Shirley. Now the corporate media is trying to earn their credibility by youth through editing and filming. So instead of having a camera crew, which by the way, I've had a camera crew on assignment before. Shout out to Daily Signal's Tim Kennedy. He was with me in Maui after the wildfires, with me in Michigan, where I would go to the UAW strike. That was the election story that I referenced more than anything else during the election season in 2024. Having a camera guy is excellent. If you have the resources to have a camera person, do it. The credibility of a journalist with like the youths, with the independents, is not the fact that you're holding up like your phone and doing the video. That didn't stop CBS from dropping in. So look at this guy. And by the way, the entire story is just an attempt to discredit Nick Shirley's investigations in Minneapolis. So CBS showing up like a week and a half late to the party.
According to federal prosecutors, it was really during COVID that fraudsters set up these fake restaurants or sham businesses and health clinics that would provide things like meals to school children or behavioral health services or housing to people with addiction.
So here's a cool question here. I can't help but notice by the weight of your chin and the gray in your hair that you're a lot freaking older than Nick Shirley. Nick Shirley probably wasn't in journalism during COVID. So here's a cool question for the kids. Where the bleep were you when this fraud was going on during COVID? Oh, that's right. You were one of the reporters whining about January 6th and licking Jack Smith's knees and toes whenever he came out in public.
And because during COVID you didn't have the same checks and balances, you had social distancing.
Man, what was the party that said we gotta, put a couple of accountability measures on these boatloads of money that are sailing off into the wild unknown?
You couldn't have.
What there was like an agency, guys, you get some kind of like a tech guru, and he brings a lot of like young, autistic, mathematically excellent nerds in, and they look over a bunch of documents, and they measure the government's efficiency on doling out money. It could be some kind of a department on government efficiency. Oh, but this CBS clown was one of the people that was bedwetting over Doge and the Department of Government Efficiency. They're trying to find people's financial records. Donald Trump is asking Minnesota to turn over its financial records. Well, yeah, because it turns out when you smell something gross and you turn over the rock, there's crap under the rock. None of what I am saying here is some brilliant insight that was given to me from on high. I'm not reading from golden tablets. Despite what Jack Smith may accuse me of, I wasn't reading the crystal ball into the future. This is basic common sense. And it is why no one trusts CBS at all. This man goes on for 1.5 minutes beyond the point I have it stopped at now.
Have the site visits, you couldn't have the in-person inspections. Well, the fraudsters got away with it all and provided the receipts and collected boatloads of cash.
I also love how the narrative right now is to use New York Post style language in order to cover those who have committed fraud. Because normally you would, by this point, have their motive or their cultural focal point, their common denominator to boil it down to, and say, hey, here's where it all kind of meets the nitty gritty. You have these white supremacists, you have these elitists, you have these students from Harvard, you have these people from this Bitcoin or cryptocurrency organization, and you would refer to it that way. But he's not doing that here. Oh, these fraudsters. You're a professional journalist. Why are you calling them fraudsters? These fraudulent fraudsters out from Kinnett Avenue. Why are you doing that? Because otherwise you'd call them these Somali migrants, because that's the common denominator. CNN did the same thing, only it's even more embarrassing. And I want to make this clear. Guys, I am coming to you from a pole barn in the middle of Indiana, okay? All that I am doing here, I have learned by watching other shows, taking notes, and doing a lot of trial and error. The way that I run board op, like how I keep all of my, sound effects and things in front of me, came from me being the sound and tech guy for Vacation Bible School when I was a teenager, all right? None of this is some super professional magical, but it's very easy over time to learn a series of skills and then make things look semi-professional. So the legacy media isn't going to change how they do their actual journalism. So what they're doing instead, the CNN reporter, she sets up a shot of herself on the phone in a hotel room. She goes and rents a Holiday Inn Express room, takes the rickety elevator up to floor 236 or up to room 236, and then sets her phone on the table and calls people as though she needs to be in the hotel calling people. CNN's got the budget, unless you work for CNN Plus, to send you around to different locations and talk to these people. And you're going to see why that is, kind of relevant here. The CNN Journalist of the Year.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Hi, my name's Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered, and
only one daycare facility answered. So CNN, who has the money and the people, I guarantee you, to be on the ground in Minnesota somewhere, somehow, they could have sent someone out there to talk, to do some investigatory journalism. Did they do any of that? No. They had someone call from the aunt's house from Twister, say, hi, I'm Georgette, Gershnabity, and I just want to know, are you telling the truth or are you lying?
Said they are a legitimate business.
Oh, so we called 5 people. 4 of them didn't answer. One of them, they did answer, and we said, hey, are you fraudulent? And they said, no, we are not. Also, give me money. And well, that settles it. More at 11. Back to you, Anderson.
Have you seen the videos, purporting that some of these daycares don't have kids inside?
Minnesota Republicans say despite the new focus from the Trump administration, they have been sounding the alarm on fraud for years.
And where were you, CNN? Where have you been for years? This has been, even at the cable, the national, the legacy corporate media level, a major story. How do I know? I'm the national correspondent for the Daily Signal. My job every ding dong dang day during the day is to go on these network outlets and then answer questions of which this was a story. What was CNN busy covering at the time? While Donald Trump made a face at Marco Rubio today in the cabinet meeting, some experts think that Trump falling asleep indicates that he died 4 years ago. And they wonder, it drives them into violent anguish. That's why so many of them have therapists. It drives them into deep anguish. They don't understand why. Oh, why would you no longer have respect for them? When a normal guy in his early 20s, by the way, Nick, very bright kid, also going to talk about Cam Higbee, also doing stellar work on the ground. Of course, we've been on the ground with Nick Sordor and Julio Rosas before. I've had the pleasure of going on the ground to many of these places. I'm probably going to end up getting in my little Toyota Corolla and driving to Columbus, Ohio before this is all over. It's not that hard to do on the ground journalism. Some of those guys are far better at it than I am for sure. But for these major organizations, this is sad. This is sad. Like the kind of sad when the guy on the sitcom goes to his high school reunion and fakes his personality to try to impress everyone. It's that level of sad. On to more of this particular news here. So how are people interacting with these, journalists around the country? We're going to get to that in a little bit. We got to cover some breaking news out of Iran first. It appears there might be several cities in regions that are now completely held by rebels against the Mullah government. That's the first time that's happened since the Iranian Mullah revolution back in the day. So don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, more on this fraud nonsense. And, of course, Project 2025. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Oh, yeah. I didn't tell you? Oh, we don't do those long commercial breaks here. No. We're working on making it so seamless, you don't even know. We just have to go in and out, play a little bumper music, reset the scene. Good evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Happy New Year's Eve to you. And for those of you that have somehow survived Project 2025 and the brutal murders that I am sure it has levied at each and every one of you, let's go around the world here. And the reason I want to go around the world is that there were certain ladies of a Pramila Jayapal-esque nature, I'll even play you a little clip early, a little bit of a tease here, who in the shadow cabinet hearings, remember the shadow hearings that were going to be a big thing every week, new shadow hearings, it was going to be incredible, and it died and no one cared? Well, Pramila Jayapal, as you'll remember at the beginning of the Trump administration, she said, hey, we've cut off our allies. The world is going to go to hell in a handbasket immediately. Here she was making this promise.
How does an American benefit when we invest in the stability of women and girls around the world?
How do we as Americans benefit when we as Americans invest in women's and girls' rights around the world? Well, first of all, you actually need to invest in the places that aren't beating and raping and enslaving their women. Iran, maybe giving them boatloads of money, probably not a good idea. Maybe importing people that maybe make a girl terrified that she just said fraud is bad on a stage. Maybe that's not a great idea. But to the actual matter at hand, since the Trump administration has incorporated its peace through strength, believe it or not, it has gotten a lot safer around the world for young women and girls. Why? Because the Trump administration is not giving the Iranian hyper-radical Islamic regime of, child goat and women rapists the free reign to do whatever they want and traffic weapons to whomever they want. And the Trump administration, through Marco Rubio, has done a phenomenal job. I will say it. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Marco Rubio is the best Secretary of State in my lifetime, very likely in your lifetime. Rubio is excellent. I'm not saying I want him to run for president. I think he'd make an excellent VP. But I think that Rubio has outperformed, for many out there who thought, he was a neocon and he's against Trump. I've said from the beginning, dude is a phenomenal Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, Chief Archivist, Capitol Engineer, Pope, winner of Dance Dance Revolution, future Emperor of Venezuela. Man's got some good stuff. His pressure, alongside Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, to intervene by strangling the Iranian regime's grip on the oil market by processing oil, refining oil for places like Venezuela, has led to essentially what is now, because of that and the Israel and United States and the Sunni alliance as well, forming the Abraham Accords happening in real time, pushing against Iran. Now that regime, Khomeini, they have very little left. So right now in Iran, and I'm keeping an eye out for as many updates as I can here, in Isfahan, which is a major city in Iran, Isfahan province in Isfahan, I want to be specific there. Protesters are, you can see in this video, marching towards the town square chanting, "This is the year of blood, and the regime of Ali Khamenei the Butcher will fall." Now, in the past, Iran has been able to terrify their people and restrict things like internet access enough so that they could not be empowered. But not just the United States, not just Israel, but a lot of countries around the world and private organizations, of which I probably can't say very much more here on the air, have intervened in very interesting ways in Iran, making sure that internet access and other elements of freedom-inspiring equipment and logistics have made it into the hands of the Iranian people. And I'm not talking about firearms or Toyota Hilux trucks, which is usually what the United States provides a revolution in the Middle East. No. Instead, what we are now seeing is a coordinated group of protesters, average people who are tired of seeing their women beaten and raped in the streets. The age of Iran is coming to a close. The age of Persia might soon be upon us. Now, as a side note, as a Baptist, saying something like that eschatologically, that makes my heart beat a little faster. But I don't want to say that too loud or Tucker Carlson will call me the enemy of America or something. So anyway, here are protesters taking over the Bazij police headquarters in Shanar Asadabad, setting the entire police headquarters on fire. Normally you have to be in Minneapolis to see something like that. Here you go. That's a death to Khomeini for those of you who don't speak, Arabic or Farsi. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. By the way, the reason that was a little bit suppressed on the sound side, man had his fist over the microphone. Understandable. I'm telling you, when you have the opportunity to have a camera crew, take it. Good little piece of advice. Also, those little Bluetooth, little portable microphones from Amazon. Also stellar to have on the independent journalism side of things. Also, setting fire to police motorcycles. I mean, if it's not a Harley Davidson or an Indian, which is the style of motorcycle that I prefer, I can understand setting it on fire. So moving past this, as I like to call a Tuesday in France, which is the setting fire to things because you're angry, moving past that to actually taking over certain buildings, the police have to be somewhere. And unlike a lot of the countries in which the Islamists are massacring moderate Muslims, Christians, Jews, Sikhs, and Uyghurs, well, it just so happens that these people aren't leaving a bunch of dead, bloated, bloody bodies strewn about the place. So that means the police aren't showing up to work. If your police are not willing to show up for work, what do? Now we have a true state of emergency situation. So we saw some of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps out and about with some what sounded to my ears like the smaller cartridge AK-74 variants firing into the crowd. Last night, or yesterday, I should say proper, in Iran. Today, the Iranian, again, today for us, nighttime for Iran, time changes. The intelligence units of the Revolutionary Guards carried out a night raid and arrested elements supported by foreign sources in the dormitories of Tehran University. When you start going through and digging out what you consider to be college radicals with like full-on intelligence raids, your country is, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Sending in intelligence forces to do blind raids is a sign that you are truly and royally bleeped. You don't send in your intelligence units into blind raids. You don't do that. You have units for that. Important. Just a little super chat here from Glenn Gardner, very sweet of you to donate $12. He said he predicts the young Somalian lady who read "fraud is bad" will soon appear and backhandedly retract the statement. Oh goodness. Fortunately, her hijab will cover the bruises that encourage the retraction. I sure hope not. I hope that if any man lays a hand on that woman, that he is hanged immediately. I don't futz around with when it comes to the abuse of women. I think that we have ropes for that. So that said, moving on to kind of the last piece here in the Iranian situation. This is another major escalation. This happened just a couple of hours ago, we're told. The governor's offices in Ramroz in southern Iran, that's the Ahvaz territory for those who are familiar with the sandbox, they were attacked and set on fire. The governor's offices were set on fire. Usually you have to be the governor of Pennsylvania for that. In the evening hours, under the cover of darkness, the protesters became braver. The attacks against the regime are getting more violent. Now, the regime actually needs to do something to woo over the protesters, to get them to calm down. They need some, what's the Latin phrase? Panem et circenses. They need some food and some entertainment. Well, unfortunately, the last season of Stranger Things is really gay and awful, so that's not going to keep them held over. The Super Bowl halftime show looks pretty rough also. And whatever the stupid European Voice Festival song is, I think they're letting dudes pretend to be chicks in the finals this year. And so I'm sorry, but seeing some hairy dude saying Madonna is probably not going to do it for the Iranian people either. So the entertainment question's out. And if the economy is struggling, it's very doubtful that the regime is going to be able to provide the Panem portion of Panem et circenses. And all of the buddies that Iran was able to rely on to distract the world so that they wouldn't be messing around in Iran, they're kind of gone. Hezbollah checked their pager. Hamas FAFO'd. The Houthis just got cut off by the UAE. And the Saudis are joining the United States now in clearing out that problem. Al-Shabaab's had its funding cut off, at least for now. You know, Tim Walz is still moving, although he has been called before Congress to testify now. That's another piece of news that we're going to get to here in just a second. Don't go anywhere. A little bit more to talk about. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. It's New Year's Eve. Project 2025 has killed its millions. Probably, maybe. Okay, it hasn't. But before we dig into that lovely bit of news, I want to share that Tim Walz is being called before the House Oversight Committee. And this next thing is just to James Comer. I would like you out there, those who have decided this is better than watching your local network affiliate who thinks that a sad lady recording herself making phone calls on camera is good journalism. If you're watching this instead of that, if you feel so desiring to, I'd like you to cut this particular portion of the show and send it to Representative James Comer. Representative Comer, my man, when we last spoke outside of your office, when I was last in the horrible hellhole of Washington, D.C., I asked you that if there were those who said they weren't going to come and testify, that you immediately held them in the same kinds of contempt that members of the previous Trump administration and circles and friends and advisors were when they didn't come testify before the January 6th hearings. If Tim Walz doesn't want to come testify, hold him in contempt. You and I know there is a little jail cell at the very bottom of the Capitol building for this exact purpose. Do it. Do it. Please. I will gladly drive to DC, which is not a fun drive for me. And I will sit in the hearing room when you pass down that fabled announcement that you will be holding Tim Walz in contempt. I will sit there and I will bring popcorn and donuts for everyone. No longer shall it be the Democrats just bringing donuts to government shutdown fights. I shall bring the Oversight Committee Jack's Donuts and the amazing Sunrise Bakery Amish donuts from Indiana, both of them together for you. If you make this happen, please. So that message aside, if you could send that his way, that would be super and duper. Let's dig into some of the, a little bit of memory here. It's something that I've been waiting for, just for you guys. So the year, finally, we're at the end, and you were told, I was told, Project 2025 was going to be the death of us all. So let's get out Project 2025 here. Let's talk for just a quick minute. Project 2025. It was going to ban abortion nationwide. Didn't do it. It was going to completely remove birth control and contraception. There was going to be a condom shortage. It was going to be terrible. Plan B was going to become Plan Nuh-uh. All of it was going to be erased from existence. They also promised that you wouldn't be able to get in vitro fertilization and fertility treatments. Nope. Going to be outlawed. They were going to throw OBs in the back of vans and carry them off to El Salvador. He was going to eliminate the Department of Education. So, fun fact, I don't know if I revealed this on the air yet. This may be the first time. I'm actually the guy who wrote that particular clause for Project 2025 and submitted that to the Heritage Foundation. The framing and the phrasing of eliminating the Department of Education and the legal mechanisms to do it, that is from yours truly. I worked on that. And no, it didn't come to fruition because Congress would have to claw it back. But I hate to break it to you as the guy who wrote it. We really did just want to see the Department of Education reduced to the Office of Education so that we could keep track on statistics. But no, we weren't going to hold states hostage on education funding or anything like that. Next here, they were going to end overtime pay for all workers. Trump was going to destroy earning overtime. No. There were going to be mass deportations. Dude, I freaking wish. I wish. Invoking the Insurrection Act for domestic use. Again, I wish. He hasn't done that yet. He's going to purge federal civil servants and replace them with loyalists, otherwise known as every single freaking administration in U.S. history. Every one of them. Ever since Jefferson resigned in protest from Washington's administration, Washington appointed, nominated, and then confirmed a replacement who wasn't Jefferson. It's an American tradition, like sinking Muslim boats in the Mediterranean. He was going to dismantle, pull apart federal agencies. He was going to get rid of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. Get rid of the FBI and the DOJ. And the EPA. Apparently, Project 2025, we were going to just get rid of the Department of Justice. Incredible. We were going to increase pollution. You didn't know that? There's actually a big knob in the U.S. Capitol. A major, huge, beautifully constructed valve that they created about 1932. And however hard you turn that particular knob is the pollution knob. And so, along came Jimmy Carter. And when he was making everyone in the White House freeze to death with the stupid solar panels, he turned the pollution knob all the way to off and simultaneously killed all of the Dow and DuPont chemical factory workers simultaneously. as if 1,000 voices cried out and were suddenly silenced. So I guess we were going to turn the pollution knob on. Exciting stuff. Apparently set fire to national forests. Gavin Newsom kind of beat us to it. We were going to ban being gay, ban LGBTQ plus divided by sign rights. We were going to eliminate protections for transgender individuals. That means you can go hunt them from your helicopter with your AR-15, your helicopter that is producing the maximum amount of pollution, mind you. It's all in here. I'd say I didn't write the rules, but I mean, like 2 sentences out of over 800 pages, I did. Cut programs like Head Start, student loan forgiveness, and food assistance. The Trump administration has done none of that. Nope. Consolidate executive power and undermine checks and balances. Nope. Leading to authoritarianism, including potential use of the military for prosecuting political opponents. Yes, we're going to have the JAG come into your town, grab you by the neck and drag you. I'm honestly, again, in some of these situations, I might be for it. And then promote Christian nationalism, whatever this is. Exciting stuff. And lest you get a little too excited here, PBS has gotten out in front of the country and announced, as the year draws to a close, a crowdsourced effort, as well as trackers from advocacy organizations and labor unions. So would these be like independent people looking at records? Because I was told that was very, very, very bad, and they're nowhere near as good. But I guess when you're, keeping track of Project 2025, all of a sudden that independent journalism is super, super good here. They show that the Trump administration has implemented roughly half of the goals laid out in Project 2025. So I read this article, so you don't have to. And again, I have the book right here. No. This, by the way, you can't implement half of the project. It is literally a menu for the education section alone. There were like 4 or 5 other alternatives to the little policy maneuver that I suggested. It was a menu. Okay, healthcare. Here are 18 different ways to dismantle Obamacare and choose something different. Republicans didn't do that this year. They waited until the last second, and so now we have issues. But you can't follow half of a menu project. That doesn't make any sense. So again, that's PBS. There's one thing I did want to dunk on just here at the very end of the show. Just something very special for you. We could talk about Jasmine Crockett's silliness. We could talk about AOC of Bernie Sanders and his promises that everyone was going to be dead or something. We could talk about the private jet excursions, whether it's to Ghana in the middle of fires or to different places around the country to hold your not presidential rallies. Instead, I want to talk about the shadows. The shadows. Hold on. There we go. The shadows. The Trump administration is coming into power. And so the Democrats, in solidarity, in unity, in unitards, are going to collectively organize the shadow government, the shadow cabinet, shadow hearings, shadow spice lattes. Because we love you, the American people. And so the Democrats in Congress, as you may recall, first of all, they said there was going to be a shadow cabinet. This was their first maneuver, and this was going to be like their front response team. Well, I'll let the Democrat explain it, just give a little refresher here.
If Trump attempts to weaponize the justice system against his political opponents with Matt
this was at the end of December in 2024.
Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff as our shadow attorney general, arguing against replacing our independent prosecutors with Trump loyalists.
Adam Schiff, shadow attorney general. Keep that in mind for a little bit, that he was the first of the shadow cabinet. That appeared to have inflated his ego all the way up to the pencil neck. Again, we'll explain why in a minute.
If Trump seeks to eliminate the Department of Education, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, a former Teacher of the Year, could step up as shadow education secretary.
Johanna Hayes, who has been accused twice since of severe plagiarism. Excellent.
To loudly defend public education.
She is loud.
United States. If Trump orders Marco Rubio to hand Ukraine and much of Eastern Europe to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Congressman Greg Meeks, as Shadow Secretary of State, could be a strong voice in support of maintaining international relationships and protecting democracy at home and abroad. Senator Michael Bennet as Shadow Treasury Secretary, and Congresswoman Susan DelBene as Shadow Commerce Secretary.
For those of you who are listening and are not watching this, again, the thing I hate the most and simultaneously love the most about the U.S. Capitol is the shadow FedEx Kinkos that they have to shadow print special things. And I have a soft spot for shadow logos and seals, given, that I designed one myself. I love vexillology and seal design, flag design, that kind of a thing. But why is the taxpayer paying for you to print out glossy posters of your campaign logo, Wiley Nickel for North Carolina? Wiley Nickel, that sounds like a cheap villain, like in Toy Story. Sheriff Woody's going up against Wiley Nickel and his partner in crime, Suspicious Dime. Anyway, let him continue.
Could help ensure the middle class and small businesses have a voice in government and call out Trump's proposed tax cuts for billionaires and corporations.
I love that, because the Trump administration has been meaner to insurance corporations than any administration since Reagan.
As Shadow Defense Secretary, Congressman Adam Smith, a great representative for the people of Washington and not a Fox News host, could counter Trump's threat to use military force against his political opponents. And
things that never happened.
Work to ensure that the Department of Defense stays loyal to the Constitution and not some wannabe dictator.
So that's just like openly suggesting treason. We're going to install our own Secretary of Defense.
And Senator Tammy Duckworth could argue against cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs that would delay the benefits and care our service members have so rightly earned.
And then those cuts never happened.
If Trump hands over the EPA to big oil ally Lee Zeldin, we could see Congresswoman Kathy Castor pushing back for environmental protection and conservation to protect the air we breathe and the water we drink.
Or as AOC says, the air we drink and the water we breathe.
And if Trump pushes to ban abortion nationwide, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro,
the purple hair lady, you remember, the one that did dances most of 2025,
could step in as Shadow Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Ah, yes, the shriveled old lady who wasn't allowed on the set of The Wizard of Oz for being too witch-like. Yes, the Health and Human Service. I'm not going to continue with this. So that was the first thing, the shadow cabinet. And then that went nowhere because it was really embarrassing and cringy, and it was just awkward. So what did the Democrats do?
Answer there, the Daily Double.
After a month and a half of Trump, it was time for the shadow hearings. So the shadow cabinet didn't work out. But Adam Schiff, he was sad that he didn't get to be the shadow attorney general or the shadow attorney colonel. So instead, we got the shadow hearings. You remember this, where they were going to meet in one of the houses. And then they were going to put some cameras on each other and hold shadow hearings. And everyone said, why? And they couldn't even get the networks to cover it. They couldn't. The only networks they could get to cover it were what appeared to be a really awkward Zoom call. I'm not joking. This is the Pramila Jayapal clip I played earlier. This is the USAID super duper ultra shadow hearing #1. Very important stuff. The main video from this appears as though someone screen recorded Zoom if it was set up by a dyslexic octopus.
How does an American benefit when we invest in the stability of women and girls around the world?
Pans all the way to her as she's done asking the question and then just sits on her awkwardly. There's the lady masking in the back at 2025. Excellent.
Of course, there's the moral obligation, and that's
camera pans back to no one.
One that 89% of Americans.
Camera still hasn't panned to the only woman in the shot.
That's Republicans and Democrats alike. But there's also the benefits that we have having a stable economy that can interact with other stable economies.
Excellent. I mean, again, riveting stuff. Shadow hearing, super duper ultra awesome. But that wasn't enough because, again, Adam Schiff didn't get to be the Attorney General, Colonel, Sergeant, super person. He didn't get to do Attorney General Stolen Valor like Tim Walz. So instead, they hold a second shadow hearing. Shadow hearing, the sequel, Electric Senate Boogaloo. This one was on the ritziest, the most exciting of television networks ever to grace the airwaves. No, I'm not talking about ESPN The Ocho. Nope, not talking about Corncob TV. I'm talking about C-SPAN 3. Not interesting enough for C-SPAN 1 or C-SPAN 2, which I'm pretty sure is just a camera pointed at Washington, D.C. No, C-SPAN 3, which, unless I'm mistaken, is run by a drunk political science major from Illinois University. Here you go. Adam Schiff, the superest of duperest shadow hearings.
Extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together...
Unprecedented hearing. The one that... This unprecedented hearing. You mean like the one that happened a week before this one? After it's happened, it's kind of precedented, bud.
Both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty.
By the way, Ilhan Omar is in this room when he's saying this. When they're saying, we're going to catch those, we're going to do real accountability. We're going to go after the fraud and people who are using, power for political gain and are, stealing things. And Ilhan Omar's over in the corner going, yes, good.
Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight, to assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of government.
There's old Adam Schiff's just so proud of himself. And you may say, well, Tony, what about the other shadow hearings? Yeah, that was it. That died on the table because no one cared. The ratings for that were so horrible that goodness gracious, I think at the time we were averaging about 3,000, 4,000 viewers per episode. And we were dwarfing it by like a factor of 10. It was awful. They couldn't even get like hospital waiting rooms to carry the signal. You would try to watch it on C-SPAN 3 and you would get like jumbled static porn from like 80s cable theft. So huge success, excellent, really proud of you Democrats. So we survived the shadow government. We survived Project 2025. I'm looking forward to Project 2026. It's literally just deport people. That's it. It's just a one page. It's a piece of printer paper. On it, I hastily scrawled, not the luring center, but instead deport everyone. Just deport them. Slap them right on out of here. And when the federal judge steps in, deport them too. Just for fun. As a treat. And with that said, I think we've wrapped up, 15 minutes into bonus tonus here. So you guys have a wonderful, excellent, stellar, shadow New Year's Eve, a great new year. We will see you back here on the Tony Kinnett Cast on Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to bug James Comer about holding Tim Walz in contempt. Again, I will bring the two greatest of Indiana donut varieties, Jack's and the Sunrise Bakery Amish donuts, to the Capitol as a bribe. I won't even open up a daycare center. I'll own up to that bribery and fraud all on my own. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. To pull that old man joke, see you next year.